Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd of the Needle Drop, doing an exclusive interview with none other than Damon Albarn of Gorillaz. We're going to be talking about the new project Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times, the songs, the
Hi,
guests, anything that comes up in this convo. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling refreshed. Just been for a swim,
Mhm.
and yeah,
Um,
it's a beautiful, beautiful but quite chilly autumn afternoon.
um, let's go into the creative process with this new
Yeah,
project. How would you say it compared to that of the recording and writing process of humans or the Now Now? I mean, I'll say just from an outsider perspective, listening to it, it seems like a lot of the material here is a lot more compartmentalized, segmented, not as much of an obsession over how it sounds conceptually or as a whole,
yeah,
but
no,
just more of a focus on
totally.
each
That's
individual.
what I that's kind of what I wanted to escape from. I wanted
Hmm.
to have a vehicle where I could just kind of go wherever I wanted. And so the idea of a season of episodes kind of
Hmm.
made sense. And I mean, when we announced season one, we'd only recorded the first tune, and
Hmm.
it just took so many different turns and became became like a sort of something that we looked forward to getting into the studio to work on. And I didn't do it all the time, and I think that that's something which yeah, I'm kind of grateful for is being able to know that whenever I want to make music, I can, but I don't have to like allocate sort of huge chunks of time, and as you say, sort of disappear down the sonic rabbit hole and try and conceptualize everything.
And would you say that personally, driving this, was this mostly just an artistic whim on your part, or was this also majorly influenced by the way the pandemic has sort of shifted everything? You know, our ability to record, connect, perform,
Yeah, well,
disseminate
it didn't
music too.
start off like that. It didn't start
Hmm.
off like that, but like 2 months in, the pandemic hit and everything had to change.
Would you be able to go a bit into the sort of selection process when it comes to guests on this new LP? When you're going into a
Well,
song, how far are you into that writing and recording process before you know who exactly it is you want to work with? Is it off the bat? Is it once you're 90% done and you sort of have a vibe or an idea
mm,
as to who would fit there?
it depends. It just depends. I think sometimes they're very basic demos that we send out to people. Sometimes it's quite close to being finished, and then things take completely different paths once somebody else has put something on. I mean, that tune MLS with JPEG Mafia and Chai. I mean, if you listen to the original demo and how it ended, they're so vastly different, almost to the point where you can't recognise where it started to where it ended. Uh,
Hmm.
and I had no idea that those two kind of sounds could possibly ever work together. I mean, they're so culturally, they come from such different spaces. It's kind of mad.
I think emotionally too. I mean, to have
Yeah.
JPEG Mafia on the
No,
record, I'm sure to have JPEG Mafia on the record, I'm sure you're familiar with his work, and I'm sure you're aware of the fact that
totally. Yeah.
his feature there is uncharacteristically upbeat.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's almost like sweet in a way, and I don't feel like I've heard a record from him yet where he's come off almost like
Well, the funny thing is,
positive or something.
yeah, I mean that he did do another part that was much more a kind of sort of shouting, raging part, and in the end, we left that out because Chai appeared in the picture, and they kind of sort of, I don't know, complemented what he was saying with the other stuff. So he did go that way, but we just didn't kind of take it that way in the end.
Hmm. Um, Would you be able to talk a little bit about another crossover here, just to go back to Pink Phantom one more time, because I'm sure a lot of people are kind of
Sure.
curious as to how exactly Black and Black and Elton John end up melting together onto a single song. I mean, I
Yeah.
think on paper a lot of people would assume that sort of thing would be out of the realm of possibility, but the auto tune on Black's voice, for example, sort of makes him sound really animated and fitting just perfectly into the whole vibe.
Yeah, I really like the combination. I've read some comments, and I think people kind of found it quite difficult to assimilate such different styles. But for me, that's the whole point of it. But the main reason why it came out that way is because originally, before the pandemic hit, I was scheduled to go to Atlanta to work with Elton. And we also had kind of like arranged meetings with Earth Gang. And I think with Black, because he's from Atlanta originally, and I know Mike Will made it, so I was going to go and hang out with him a bit. It was just we were going to kind of work for a couple of weeks in Atlanta. And then obviously at the last minute that didn't happen. So we kind of sort of, I don't know, they sort of ended up on the same track, by some kind of weird osmosis.
In a holistic way, because you were talking earlier about there not necessarily being a grand conception to a lot of these tracks because you're trying to break away from that. But in a similar way to previous Gorillaz albums, I am admiring and noticing the fact that you are kind of getting like a similar mix of artists here to guess with you, in that, you have very, new, fresh, but well-established and exciting kind of hype voices. You have legends on here, and you have a batch of artists as well who undoubtedly, through your audience, you're kind of exposing them a little bit in a way, people who are, audiences are going to be at least a little bit unfamiliar with, the Gorillaz audience.
Yeah.
Was there sort of any conception as to sort of getting that perfect mix as far as like the types of names, the level of unfamiliarity, as opposed to, getting a Schoolboy Q on there too to kind of balance it out?
I mean, we have always been eclectic, and I do feel sometimes a lot of, right, modern pop music is collaborations, period, now, isn't it? It just is. And sometimes you do feel that people are working together because they feel like, they will both benefit in numbers and likes if they do it, and that's their business. But for me, it's got to do with that, it's got to do with just trying to explore the possibilities of modern pop music. And kind of sort of breaking down barriers, between genres, and, that really kind of inexplicable thing that exists within music of like sort of generational music. And I just don't get that. I think, anything can kind of sound good. It doesn't matter who's making it, you know what I mean? It's about its integrity. So yeah, that's the kind of modus operandi that we function under.
One of the most curious crossovers to me personally, because I haven't heard her pop up in a little while, but I'm surprised on one of the bonus tracks here you grabbed Jonas Policewoman.
I've known her for years, actually.
Yeah.
I first met her when she came to one of the Africa Express shindigs. And I've always really got on well with her. And it's always a pleasure to jam with Joan. She's really a joy, really. And it's really quite loose. It's not sort of, in a way, it's not as crafted as some of the other tunes, but intentionally so. Sort of, we just enjoyed it being that casual. It was literally done in a couple of hours one afternoon,
One thing I noticed instantaneously is like that sort of loose vibe where things aren't quite as methodically assembled in a way, almost
Yeah,
puzzle like you were saying earlier. That almost is night and day. Like as soon as you switch over into the bonus tracks, like you have that
yeah.
Earth Gang song that is just this massive dance anthem where the grooves are just
It's
like
a
going
great
on
tune.
forever.
I really, really like
Yeah,
that tune. It's kind
yeah.
of, and I love the intro. That's one of my favourite intros ever that I've been involved in. I can't wait to
Mhm.
play that live. Literally, that's just going to be amazing live with the band. They're going to just murder that in a good way.
But yes, as soon as you break into those bonus tracks, which I thought was very smart separating because there is sort of a single power to a lot of the standard edition tracks, but like as soon as you break into the back end of the record, it really does become like a vibe on a lot of the songs.
Yeah, and I think we've always had a tradition of putting out B-side albums as well, like G-sides, D-sides, uh,
Mm.
because there's always it's a much bigger picture, and it's not just about marketing something; it's about kind of sharing the process. And I really like sharing the process of making. If I had it my own way, and I wasn't constrained by just the realities of logistics and everything, I'd be putting out music like, at least on a weekly basis.
I mean, considering that, and also considering like when you're talking about something as open form as I'm just going to keep dropping songs and keep dropping songs and keep dropping songs, like how exactly do you know when you have the record in a way? How do you know when it's time to stop? Are you trying to hit a certain, sort of like length or anything like that? Is there just
Well,
like, I know these singles are working together in a way?
yeah, when someone says stop, that's when I stop. You know,
Oh, that's fine. I think that's a way to be. To also talk about some of the sounds and styles of these tracks. A personal favorite and highlight for me on the record was most definitely that track where you have Peter Hook on there, Aries. Can we talk for a second about just like how much New Order worship that song is? I mean, I personally love
quite
New
a lot,
Order.
quite a lot.
It's a lot.
That bass line, I played that bass line basically on it, and it was like I can't. That's even though I've kind of sort of played it and written it, I suppose it's just not my bass line. It's Peter's bass line. So I rang him up and said, "Can you come and do your bass line that I've already done, please?" Because it's like it's just be ridiculous. It's so distinctive, that style, that
And the tone too.
oh yeah, but the tone is that's his secret tone, and although
Well,
he did impart that secret, so I do know how to completely replicate it now.
well, I'm sure. I'm sure that alone was worth the studio session. Speaking of childhood heroes, though, who I assume, as you kind of spoke very reverently about New Order, we also have Robert Smith on the opening of the
Yeah,
record too. I mean, how much of a I mean, you've been doing this for a while. How much of a bucket list collaboration is that?
I've always admired the Cure, and they were an important band for me when I was growing up. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe not on the. I mean, it's difficult. You see, you can't. It's hard to compare. I mean, I was going to try. I was going to attempt to compare them to the Specials and how important they were for me. But
Hmm.
you know, then I'd have to go. Well, were the Specials as important musically? I mean, politically, they definitely were really influential. But were they as important to me musically as someone like the Human League or the Cure? I don't know. Just I think I just took big chunks from all of them, you
Hmm.
know. But I loved kind of Robert Smith's fantasy imagery, and Love Cats was really a very big tune for me when I was growing up.
And when onboarding someone like Smith onto a track, obviously going into Aries, there was like this really clear vibe that Peter Hook is a part of. Sort of creating that. I mean, how exactly were you sort of planning on trying to complement or work Robert Smith into this track? Because it doesn't sound like a dead ringer for sort of a Cure song off the bat or anything.
No, I mean what I gave him was just a really basic drum track, a really skittish piano, and my niece's trumpet playing, because she was in lockdown with my sister, and we were all staying together. And she's very musical, but kind of a bit, not that interested in hanging out in the studio. But I managed to get her to come into the studio, and I just said, just play whatever you want to play over this drum beat and this piano. And she played in like this one take, and we just kept it absolutely as she did it. So I just sent the piano, the drums, and the trumpet to Robert, and he did the rest really. And the funny thing about that, when it came back, I was so like thrilled, because it sounded like a Cure song from like the early '80s. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be able to sing with Robert Smith. And I tried so many different things, and then none of them worked, none of them. So I had to, weirdly, my voice and his voice just didn't work together. So I had to do what I call my 2D Sprechgesang, which it's not rap, it's Sprechgesang. So it's an arcane 18th century German form of rap.
So what exactly was that style conceived like? Because it's
I think it's kind of, it was Feel Good Inc. really was the beginning of it, wasn't it? Yeah. And I've been, I mean, I really enjoy it, because it's an opportunity to sort of say some quite bizarre things, you know what I mean? They wouldn't necessarily be able to sing about. Like in that tune, I sing about speeding through a forest, strange echoes of Belarus, where presidents pin badges on disconnected youths, which you could sing, but it's probably better in Sprechgesang. It's definitely not rap.
Speaking of some of the subjects and lyrical substance of the record, I mean, Gorillaz is obviously, and you are obviously no stranger to working social commentary into your music. Is there simultaneously, as you're trying to not overload this record with any overarching themes, also trying to make note of just how batshit insane everything is right now? I mean, obviously it kind of comes out in the title, but
but that's Robert who gave it that title. That's not me. I just put a Z on the end. It does come out, but I think it's, if you kind of comment as something is happening, which obviously we had the opportunity to do this year, I think it can date very quickly,
And the fact that there is an entire lore and mythos to Gorillaz in and of itself, I imagine sort of is another thing to consider, because you're kind of bringing in something from the natural world into, which obviously there are crossovers and influences, but
it is. But I mean, that's what Gorillaz is. It's kind of a mad hybrid, isn't it? It's the sort of thing that if we were in Star Trek and we went into an alternate universe, we'd land on a planet, and that's be Gorillaz planet.
Is there anything about season 2 right now that we have conceptualized in any way, either sort of like beats or tunes or sort?
I've got the first tune.
Are there collaborators we have on the horn that we're dying to work with too for it?
I don't know yet. I mean, I don't know. Jamie sent me an email last night about an idea he'd had for a collaborator, which I'll bear in mind. I won't say now. That's the fun of it, I mean, that's the joy of Gorillaz, is not really knowing how it's going to, what the outcome is going to be, but starting it anyway, because the process is as fun as the end result, hopefully.
And could you go a little bit as we kind of close up into some of the selection process that might go into kind of finding collaborators for future records and for future songs? Because I mean, it seems like you're spending quite a bit of time, more than your average musician who might be just kind of doing everything within a group. Just like fielding for new talent, new voices. I mean, your musical diet your musical diet on a regular basis must be pretty regularly rotated and always in search of something new.
Yes, I think I've always been that. My music consumption has always been all over the place. Like last night, I was listening to a Cymbalin record I picked up in a Hungarian restaurant about 7 or 8 years ago. Really random, klezmer, but I love klezmer. So yeah, that just gives you an example of where I go. And tonight, I don't know. I've got a lot of CDs that I haven't listened to yet. So, and I've found in lockdown a good CD player. So I'm kind of, I'm catching up on stuff I should have listened to like 15 years ago.
It's funny you sort of observe some of those changes and how, in a way, considering how visual or visually intensive, the music scene and music at large has become over the years. It's like, Gorillaz was sort of ahead of the curve in a lot of respects in that way, considering how central that of a role that kind of plays to the whole, to the whole thing.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we maybe we're the first truly internet kind of sort of created band. Which I mean, we were first, but we definitely won't be last. And people will get to use technology before us, and that will be frustrating. But it doesn't really matter, because my reason for doing it is that it's really a lot of fun, and I love working with Jamie, and I love working with Remy, and I love working with the huge kind of list of people that we worked with in the past. I got to work with Bobby Womack. That's good enough for me. And Dennis.
Thanks for coming on.
Well,
thanks for coming through. Yes. Oh my God. Don't even get me started on the Lou Reed track.
And Ibrahim Ferrer and Ike Turner. And on.
And on and on and on. Well, thank you for coming through and having this convo, and just keep the music coming, keep the collaborations coming.
It's nice to. It's nice to. I think this is the first time really with this record that I've sort of kind of, been allowed to kind of move out of the sort of more conventional ways of getting a message across. So for me, this is new ground. I'm happy to be on it, so to speak.
Yeah, this has been exciting and sort of new ground for me too. So I'm glad it was good for both of us.
Yeah, no, thanks ever so much, man. Thank you.
Okay, and just to let everyone know, don't go anywhere. The premiere of Song Machine Episode 8, The Valley of the Pagans, is about to play.